There's at least 5. I support one of them, and I think the other 4 are nuts. Right? So there's Black Lives Matter. All lowercase letters is a sentence. You can't disagree with it because it's obvious that Black lives actually matter. And you shouldn't be forced to say obvious things. But what is that? That's a call, right? Mm-hmm. They're saying, hey, look, white people, people of other races, we have a different experience of this society, and it's bad.
Yeah.
And we need you to hear us. And we want you to care. And we want there to be action taken that we can work on together to figure out. And who couldn't support that movement? I think everybody in the world supports that movement. Right. But then you have the official one, and their website's full of like literally neo-Marxist stuff, and they're like weird, like queer feminist something or another. Like seriously, it's all on their about page on the Black Lives Matter website. And it's like, that's a lot of baggage, man. I don't know if I'm for that. And then you have like the training video comes out with the one saying, we're trained Marxists. And they're trained activists. You don't actually have to go along with all of that to agree with the sentence.
Right.
Then you have this thing with white people. There's like a Black Lives Matter movement that's white people that are like washing black people's feet and like calling them and apologizing and like freaking them out. And I mean, this is actually horrible too.
Oh,
like,
it's amazing.
Could you imagine what it's like being like somebody calls you, like all your white friends start calling you and they're like, by the way, I've always kind of been racist. Like you had a relationship with that person and now it's so awkward.
My favorite one was the white actors that all got together in that black and white film.
No kidding.
Isn't that amazing?
That was so, oh my gosh.
So stupid.
Oh.
And there was ones in there that I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed their work. The problem is these motherfuckers haven't worked in months and they want attention.
That's right.
They wanted attention and they weren't getting it. So they're like, I know how to really juice this up in my favorite.
Me.
It's so dumb. It's so dumb. Aaron Paul, he broke my heart.
Oh.
I saw him in there.
Yeah.
The actor, the Breaking Bad guy.
Yeah.
He's amazing. I love that dude.
And then
I was like, bro, I wish I would have talked to you before that.
I know.
I can tell you how this goes.
I can tell you what happens next.
This ain't good, man. Because guys like me are going to watch it.
That's right.
Let me tell you, we're going to make fun of it a lot.
A lot. That's right.
Get the fuck out of here.
It was so funny. So then there's 2 more. We'll just drop them. Okay. Whatever these. So like.
But I wanted to get back to this if you don't mind.
No.
When that piece came out and you got the award and then they found out.
Yeah.
Like what was you said that she was pissed off.
I mean, it was just I got this email from her that was like short, but it was like, I'm really hurt that you were deceptive to me. You know, it's kind of like that. And I felt bad actually. Like I didn't do it to like be mean to people.
Right.
This was about ideas for me. Like that project was about the ideas. It was about the scholarship. It wasn't about the people. And I felt like it was really unfortunate that there were people implicated in it. I actually did feel bad for them in almost every case. There were a couple of them that actually pissed me off with some of the stuff they wrote to me, so I didn't feel bad about them so much. But that's a human failing. I'm not a perfect person.
When they pissed you off, because what did they write?
Oh, this one woman. We wrote a paper about masculinity, and at Hooters. And we said that the only reason guys go there is, besides the obvious wanting to ogle chicks, but the main reason was so that they could order, like double meaning on the word order, right? Order their food. They could order pretty young women around that have to do what they say. Mm-hmm. And, they can patriarchally order, taking their orders is a pun. And this one woman wrote like this long review of it, and she was like, this paper, it was submitted to a journal called Men and Masculinities. It was a paper that was supposed to study the masculinity. And she wrote back, this paper talks about men instead of women, and it victim blames and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, oh, you can go to hell. It was aggravated also because my paper didn't get in because of that. And it's like, why would a paper about men and masculinity have to be about the women? Oh, because feminism, that's why. Of course. And it's like, it's so annoying that aggravated me. Most of them, the rest of them were actually like really nice people.
So I think your feeling is that there's really nice people that get bamboozled into really bad ideas. And then when you snuck in these hoax papers, that you're essentially speaking their lingo and they don't even know that they have a lingo.
That's right. And so I actually think that what we're looking at with this woke movement, and we've kind of compared it to cult, we've kind of compared it to real, I actually think it's evil. And the reason is because exactly what you just said. It plays on people's best nature. It takes good people and twists them to its purpose. And that's horrible. Like, the whole game is to try to make you a nicer, more caring person. So it takes your care and turns it into something literally totalitarian. Whenever somebody's going to punish people and think it's the moral thing to do, that's where you've got some danger going on.
Yeah.
And the reason they do that, by the way, is because they think everything happening is violence. Like, why does Antifa, by the way, that's the fourth Black Lives Matter movement, is these Antifa agitators starting the riots. Why do they feel justified in throwing a brick through a Starbucks? Why do they feel justified in starting yelling about targets? Why does this keep happening? And the reason starts taking resources, capitalist resources, money, from that neighborhood and then dumping it into a corporation. And they see that as a form of violence against the neighborhood. So they're justified in using violence to disrupt that by throwing a brick through the window, even though it's probably some franchise owner who's just trying to make a buck, trying to have a job that runs it. Like the Antifa books are crazy. They talk about the collection of capital, the any kind of racist or sexist or whatever language as they want to determine it being a form of violence. They call these things like epistemic violence, and in some of the literature they call it discursive violence. In some of the literature, sometimes they just call it violence. In queer theory, calling somebody saying you're a man or a woman is called a violence of categorization. So there's all these different types of violence, and they're sort of marinating in this idea that these things that are happening, the way people talk, micro assault, is a violence. And I mean, I even saw a thing somebody sent me today from some university, Indiana maybe, where the person's saying that we're tearing down these physical monuments, but maybe we need to think about discursive, so verbal monuments. And then in the middle of this, which is otherwise cracked but not violent, he actually says something to the effect of that we really need to be prepared to do violence against this violence. And so they're marinating in these kinds of thoughts. So you get these like with Antifa, what are these dudes? These dudes are like hopped up, mostly young men trying to put out, I mean, there's some women in there too, of course, but there's a lot of young men who are like doing their young male rage, and they're pissed off at society, and they've read all these books saying how America sucks and how it hurts, all these, poor people, it hurts, minorities and so on. A lot of people are feeling the sting, frankly, because the Republican policies since Reagan have really kind of like put some squeeze on people.
Well, it's really amplified now because of COVID, because of the lockdowns.
Oh, yeah, exactly. People are out of their minds. They're living on Twitter.
Yeah, they're living on Twitter, and also they're broke.
And you're losing your job.
So they feel justified to loot. They feel justified to smash and rob. And they don't even have to really intellectualize it or really, when they're rationalizing this, they don't have to really make cogent points. I mean, it's just weird how quickly it happened. It was clearly exacerbated by the lockdowns.
That's right.
It's one of the most amazing combination of events that happens in a perfect storm order.
Right. And so we are in a situation because of a lot of political currents for the last 50 years where there's a lot of billionaire philanthropist groups, right, that generate a lot of money. They run a lot of think tanks. They run a lot of policy forums and organizations and 501c3s and so on and so forth to study things and do these things. The rapidity with which the materials, like the Instagram ready tracts that you could read and the little videos, the speed and the educational curricula and the guides for here's a bunch of resources for how to remake your business. This stuff came out fast. So what I think is actually going on is, political operative types wait for, the saying is never let a good crisis go to waste, right? Mm-hmm. So they wait for a precipitating event, and then they've been making easy digest materials for a long time and paying people like, hey, come work for our forum. What we really need to do is look at how we can get books for like anti-racist toddler books, anti-racist kids. And so they get people writing these books, and they think they're doing, it's not like some, boardroom nasty stuff. And then these materials are just ready to go out fast. And so we had, as you said, a perfect storm. COVID's pissing everybody off. The media has everybody pissed off. Trump has everybody pissed off. It's like impossible to watch any of this and not be just pissed. The amount of being lied to that's just so obvious, through a lot of the news right now about these protests, especially in riots, is just galling.
Well, the article that I showed you that shows that the COVID kick-up, the uptick in cases had nothing to do with Black Lives Matter, but probably had to do with people staying inside.
Yeah, it's like it's just gaslighting. I don't know what's true about COVID at all now. It's like you were allowed to go out in like groups less than 10, but not if you were protesting. Then they could be up to 1,000 or so. I mean, it's
it
like
could be multiple thousands.
it's like what in the world is going on?
Once you're protesting, and as long as it's a good cause, everybody could die.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fine.
It's because racism is the real virus, is what they actually said.
Well, that's a real virus too. But that COVID shit's real. Trust me.
It's a
I
thing.
know. I know multiple people that have it right now. Imagine if I was obese or had diabetes or.
Oh, you can't talk about that.
Yeah. It's
No.
Fat shaming?
Yeah.
Fat shaming?
Yeah, that's
Already?
like fat shaming. Yeah, obesity is not allowed to be talked about as a medical relevant condition. That is called medicalizing obesity.
I love Jon Stewart to death. He's amazing. But we did a podcast the other day, and he actually said, "You can be overweight and be healthy." And I had to stop him. I said, "No, you can't. That's not true. That's literally, it shows that you have an issue. That's like, that's a sign of non-health, of not being healthy. It's a tax on your body. For sure, your body works harder. But he's just so nice that he wanted to say it because it's a thing that people like to say, and he wanted those people to like him and not come after him.
Actually, it's trademarked and everything. Health at every size.
Yeah.
There's a movement. Actually, there was a blog I used to follow. That's where I first learned about it. That it was called Dances with Fat, and it's this woman who's very overweight who danced around, and she's a good dancer. Actually, she really was. And then she tried to run a marathon, and she couldn't run the marathon because she didn't. Well, she finished the marathon, but there was a time limit, and she finished after the time limit, so it didn't count. So she lost her marbles about it and said, that the time limits are oppressive and fat exclusionary and all this, like 9 hours or something. And then so she then created another blog called Iron Fat, where she was going to she was going to do an Ironman,
but fat.
While fat, to prove that fat has nothing to do with health. They have this whole thing, though,
fat
that
dancing.
That it is the Iron Fat lady. They have this whole thing that you can't associate obesity and health at all. It's not allowed. It's considered a medicalizing narrative. And if we were to come up with, let's say that like you invented tomorrow Joe Rogan's, you're getting a supplement company, and Joe Rogan's weight loss pill, but not like some bullshit. Imagine it really worked, right? Mm-hmm. So everybody who takes this pill within the course of a month would get to their ideal body weight, right? By pill magic. Just imagine. They would actually, in fat studies, which is a real, critical fat studies, it's a real thing. We wrote a paper about that too. They would call that a fat genocide because you're getting rid of all the fat people.
But you're not.
But every one of them's healthier.
Getting rid of them. They are healthier, but they can always choose to be fat again.
So that's the problem with this shit. Is it plays on people's best instincts while giving like the worst possible reading of everything all the time. It's like there's almost like this weird belief that like everything just happens by magic or something. Like you can just go like fire everybody who knows what they're doing and replace them with people who don't know what they're doing and want to be just diversity. Like, and I'm not even going to say they're not competent, but they do want to focus on diversity or whatever the issue of the day is. So you're going to fire like this super competent guy and then replace him with somebody who at least is going to dedicate some of their time to diversity initiatives. What's going to happen is eventually stuff becomes less competitive, stuff becomes less efficient. I really feel it when I fly, man. And it's not the thing you think. I don't think, the planes are going to start dropping out of the sky. I start thinking about the air traffic control. Like, that's complicated, man. And if you don't have people that are at the top of their game programming that stuff in those towers, looking at that stuff, but it's everything. We actually have a society, when we have an advanced society like we have, you actually have to have people who know what's going on and who are focusing on the job to get it done, to build things. And it can't all be we have to pay attention to the human resources issue, but this stuff's all about turning everything into the human resources issue. And then with like scholarship, I don't even know what to say because they're saying we need to do research justice. And like, so that means
research justice?
That's what they call it. So you have to take, so you have to like cite more black scholars and women scholars and indigenous scholars. And so you don't cite white people or men so you can even out their citation scores so they get more promotions. And then you have to take academic departments and you have to start hiring more of, and I don't mean you have to hire identities. You have to hire people who think that way because otherwise they don't qualify. And then you start getting rid of the people who don't think that way. So you're actually concentrating even in somebody just sent me something about chemistry. The field of chemistry is like going like full woke. And it's like, what the hell does that have to do with chemistry?